Hello, my name is Elle White Sawin, and I listen to the segment on NPR called Location, Location, Location. And I am here to submit my thoughts based on the assignment. So, to describe my childhood to my peers, unfortunately, due to childhood trauma, I don't remember anything past 12 years old. So I'm going to describe what I remember from 12 years old through my teenage years. So I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Chapel Hill is primarily a college town. You'll find the University of Chapel Hill, Carolina. But it also has many suburbs, and I do remember having free range of the neighborhood. We did live in a suburb in the 90s. So it was more of like a middle class neighborhood, so a lot of people knew who I was and who briefly knew who my family was, and so they always had an eye on the children. I think because I lived within a 5 to 10 minute walk from my friends, I think my parents trusted me enough to be independent that way. And I did grow up to be proudly independent based on the free range I had throughout my tween and teenage years. I did notice when we did move to a small town at 15 that I still prefer city life. So when we lived in the small town of Outer Banks, North Carolina, a lot of people were different. They were more prejudiced and cliquey, I would say. And then the people who lived in the city who were like a little bit more carefree and didn't talk as much as the people do now in the small town. So when in middle school, when I lived in Chapel Hill, we lived close to a town called Carborough, and they had very many green spaces. I remember going to the playground or the parks with my friends. This location or locations shaped who I am today. I do remember when I lived in Chapel Hill that I could have a little bit more trust, and I do remember that I had a little bit more independence then. But when we moved to the small town, we lived near my aunt, who was my mother's sister, and then that location, living right next to my aunt, I couldn't really get away with anything, so it taught me to act out more in my teenage years. I now in my 30s have learned what happened in my tween and teenage years were pretty significant, but also insignificant. compared to adulthood, where I have a lot of freedom, but I still am close to my family because of the proximity of how I was raised. I think because we lived in primarily good neighborhoods in both the Outer Banks and in Chapel Hill, I did have access to good schools, and I did feel safe in my neighborhoods just because I knew everybody, and when I was a teenager, I had extra adults looking out for me. Okay, thank you.